I'm here to do my weekly wrap up. I'm sorry for the lack of videos this week. I think ever since like the December holidays, I've been like kind of like out of loop, out of sync with making videos, and so but I don't really have an excuse in January. I just was I don't know, like out of practice with making videos. So I'm hoping, it's a new month, it's February, that I'll be able to remedy this. Yeah, I'm wearing my 49ers sweatshirt, my boyfriend's sweatshirt. We're going to be watching the Super Bowl today. Well, I might be watching part of it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I like watching some of the commercials. But yeah, hopefully if whoever's following this, like their team wins. I actually lived in San Francisco for a bit, maybe like 10 years ago or so. I didn't live in San Francisco. I lived more closer to San Jose. But yeah, it was a really nice time. It's a very expensive place to live, but it was really cool to be close to San Francisco and all like the amenities that they have, not just like the museums and things like that, but just like the outdoors was really nice too, and having the beach there. But yeah, so even if my boyfriend didn't like the team, I probably would root for them just because I have more of a connection with San Francisco than I do Kansas City. So anyway, let's get into the books. I read a lot of books this week. I read 10 books, and I know like a lot of you get shocked with how much I read, but I am like equally shocked as well, if that makes sense, because I don't realize how many books I'm reading until it comes to making this video, and I have to count how many I read. And I was like, oh wow, I read a lot. I think it's because I'm reading more books than one at a time. I'm reading often like an audiobook, I'm reading a physical book, and I'm reading a Kindle book. And so yeah, I don't realize, what's happening. So yeah, let's get into what I'm reading, what I read. I read some of these are in order in which I read them. This is Yutsuba, Volume 2, and this is about Yutsuba, which is this girl right here. She's like 5 years old, and I think her name means clover, like 4-leaf clover or something like that in Japanese, because her hair is green, and she's like these 4 tufts of hair, how she styles it, and she's just excited about life. She loves like all these new experiences, and so each book is about a new experience that she's encountering. And in this one, she goes to the swimming pool, and it's this really funny scene with like her neighbors, and they're all joking around, and some of them get dunked in the pool, and yeah, it was just a really light, fun read. I then read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is the first book in the Wild series or trilogy. I'm not sure how many books there's going to be here, but this is like all part of like what I've been on a kick with reading like cold wintry books, like I said, in Antarctica and Alaska. And this is about a family, and in particular the daughter here who so her mother was living out in like the tundra way up north, and in Alaska, and she just didn't like it. She didn't like living in a small village. She wanted to live in a city. So she takes her really young daughter and moves to Toronto, but the dad stays there because he's like a pilot, not a bush pilot, but he's like he's a pilot, like ferrying around like the people in the different villages and working as like a rescuer, emergency rescue as well. But so they've really lost touch. And so the daughter grows up in Toronto, and she's really into like shopping and social media and things like that. And so she really doesn't have much contact with the father, but she gets pulled back to Alaska because the dad is sick. And so she wants to, just in case he happens to pass, she wants to be able to like at least reestablish some communication before that. And so she goes out there, and she doesn't remember being there as a kid. I think she left when she was like 2 or 3 years old. And so the funny part in this is she is constantly being forced to be around this grumpy neighbor who is also a pilot, and he works for her dad, and he's like her chauffeur because she doesn't have a license, because in Toronto she didn't need it living in the city. And so he's like this like outdoorsy, gruff man, and she's like I said, she was into social media and into makeup and hair and things like that. And so there's a lot of funny scenes where he plays some pranks on her by stealing her makeup and stealing her hair products, and so she's just distraught having to go like barefaced. And so it was a lot of funny scenes with them too, which was really nice to read about. This is the first book I read by K.A. Tucker, and I'm for sure gonna be reading more, especially like the second book in this series, because yeah, I thought this was a great book. I was like listening to it on audio, and I'm like walking my dog and whatever, and I'm constantly like grinning because of all the interactions that all the funny moments she's having with this guy. It was just hilarious. I then read My Forever Home. This is book 3 in the Rescue Me series by Debbie Burns. And what brought this to my attention, I read the first 2 in the series, and I was at the library and I saw the 4th one had come out, and so I wanted to read this 3rd one here. And each of the books are revolving around, sort of like cat hair in my nose, revolving around an adoption center, kind of like a SPCA, but a lot nicer because it's not a kill shelter, and there's a lot of money and thought going into how these animals are, in these cages, and they want to make sure ensure that they're going to a good home. So in this one, it's about the woman who she almost became a vet, but she couldn't commit to completing the education, but she still wants to work with animals, and so she gets a job at the adoption center. And so she runs into the guy here, but there's no faces, so I don't know why I'm pointing. There's no faces. It's weird, it's cut off. But the guy who she meets him, he's walking a neighbor's dog, and so he grew up around dogs, but he doesn't really know how to read their mannerisms as well as she does, and so she's helping and was walking the dog. But the main story is with this dog here, because he's constantly encountering the stray on the streets, the Malamute here, and so he doesn't know really how to capture. He's tried many times, but it's just not working. So they get together in order to help the dog. But which makes this book stand out for me was that the dog actually has chapters, like you see there's chapters through his perspective as well, which was kind of heartbreaking because he's living on the streets, and so you see him like foraging for food and being attacked by strangers, like mistreated by strangers, and like his former owners and things like that. And so it was really nice at the end to have them all come together. I was like, oh, he has a home now, which was nice, because like I rescued my my animals here, Winifred and Tucker. So yeah, I really support adopting from shelters instead of pet shops. But yeah, so I'm for sure going to be reading the 4th one in the series. And yeah, this was just a really, really nice read. I then read Walk Me Home. This is the first book in the Silver Lake Ranch series by Liza Kendall. And this one I saw over at Sarah at Steeped in Books. She was talking about this book, and she made it sound really good, and so I wanted to pick it up. This also has a dog on the cover, but this is like a second chance romance following a woman who, like the man and woman here, they were like high school sweethearts, and the guy kind of considered her family his own family in a way, his like second home, but things like fall apart because there's a devastating fire, and someone in her family actually dies because of this, and especially her grandfather accuses him of setting the fire, and so there's a huge rift, and they just fall apart. But they're coming back together because there's a wedding, and the woman, the bride, is listed, like labeled as a bridezilla in this book, and she was just so irritating and over the top that it was funny to read about. It's like the stuff that she had them doing, and like she kept changing her mind and things like that. But it's mainly following their relationship here. And so yeah, this was a nice read. My one thing I didn't like too much was the grandfather, who had this huge grudge against him. He was a bit too gruff. But it kind of balanced out the sweet of the story with having, it's to be expected that the grandfather, because someone in his family died, and if he believes that this guy was at fault, then okay, I can kind of understand it. But he was a teenager at the time, and it was like an accident, and there's a whole story there. And I really like what this book is, like there's a huge in-depth like history that you get to find out, and the story like unravels as you go. And so yeah, there's a lot of like meat to this book, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, so this was really good. I then read A Place Beyond, Finding Home in Arctic Alaska by Nick Jans. And this is kind of like an essay collection of sorts. Each essay is talking about a different aspect of living out in Alaska. So, for example, there's essays on him going out fishing, him fixing his snowmobile, him going hunting, and things like that. And him having encounters with like the native people there, like helping build, like funding a church, and just like not just like the history of the area, but also like how it's changing. So we talked a lot about how he's a basketball coach, and how basketball is a huge thing there, and all the money that goes into into, because all of these villages aren't connected by roads, and it's really cold, that they're having to pilot, like your away game, you have to fly the whole team to this other village, these really small teams. And so it was really interesting to learn about, like, kind of current day, what's happening in these small Arctic villages. And so yeah, it was a really good read. And then I looked up the author after I finished reading it, and I come to realize, like, he's like a really famous, like, Alaskan writer. And so I'm planning to read a couple more books by him that my library happens to have. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I then read Morning Glory by Lavriel Spencer. And this I saw over at Bree Hill's channel. I think that's who I saw it from. And or at least she was talking about this author. So I was looking at the books, and see, this one caught my eye, because it sounded like a little bit different. It's about a woman who, she grew up kind of like trapped in her home due to this like religious thing that's going on with her parents. How she can't leave this home due to these weird circumstances until she was like forced to go to school like later. And so she isn't really involved in the town or anything like that. And so she has but she got married, and but so she's now a widow, and so she has 2 kids and a third one on the way. And so she puts a clipping in the newspaper, an ad in the newspaper saying, "Husband, I need a husband." And so the other main character is, this is a guy who answers her ad, and he is like an ex-con, and but he's a good guy overall. And so it's like, their relationship of kind of like a marriage of convenience, and then they slowly form a relationship, which was nice to read about. But what was weird about this one was there was like bizarre secondary plot that didn't make any sense until the very end, and it just felt out of place. I didn't think it was needed. I don't want to spoil anything of what was going on there, but it was. I can tell you a little bit about it. It was about a shop girl who she's out for all men, even if they're married or what have you. So this new guy's in town, and so she must have him, and so she tries to encounter him and like ambushes him, and it's constantly like forcing herself upon him, and he's constantly like rebuking her, like, no, I don't want this relationship. I have a relationship with the main character here. But yeah, there's this weird twist that happens, and it was a bit weird. But the story itself was good. Like, they're seeing their relationship slowly develop, and kind of like bringing the woman out of her shell and making her part of the town was nice to read about. Let's see. I then read a Notorious Vow, the third book in the 400 series by Joanna Shupe. And again, I saw this on someone's channel. I need to like write down, like, when I see these books and I get them from my library, I need to write down who I'm getting these from. But the reason that this caught my eye was because it's about a deaf. The man in here is deaf, and so I have a deaf boyfriend. So I wanted to see how it was written. And I was a little bit disappointed because I think it's like a misunderstood thing about deaf people, is that everyone just assumes that they can read lips. And I have never, hard of hearing, they're a little bit better at reading lips, because they can hear at least part of what you're saying. But a fully deaf person, I have never ever, and I probably met like 100, 200 deaf people. I've never met a single one of them that can read lips like fluently. It's impossible. Like I think I took a couple classes on sign language, and a couple like deaf history classes, deaf culture and history classes, and I think it's like at most like 20-25%. Like the best lip readers can only gather like 20-25% of what you're saying, and especially if you don't have any context of what they're saying, then it's completely random. You have no idea. Like, there's so many words that look the same. So yeah, going on with that is, in this, he can understand every single thing you're saying. If you just gotta look straight at him, and he can read your lips like full conversation. And that is, I'm telling you right now, it's impossible. Like I said, I've never met a single person who can do that. And it's not just this book. It's not just this author. Like, I've seen like every time like deaf people are like in TV shows or in movies or what have you. It seems like that's like continuing like the misunderstanding that they can just like read lips like that, and then yeah, no, that it's like impossible. But yeah, anyway, the story. Let's get back to the story. It's about a woman who she has very over the top parents. They're like these like. They're like the villains in the story because she must marry a very wealthy person because her parents are destitute, and they need her to have this like wealthy marriage. And so the person they set her up with is also like way over the top, is like very rich man, older man who just wants this young thing to procreate with, and so he can have children. And it was just really weird. And so she marries him, the deaf man here, out of convenience, basically to kind of escape who her parents, who they want her to set her up with. And so yeah, it goes on from there. And so this isn't my normal kind of book. Like it's, something like this might, maybe, I don't know, it's just like the covers or what. Like I kind of shy away from these stories because I don't like reading explicit romance scenes or anything like that. So I always just assume with covers like this that it would be like that, and it kind of was. So I skipped over those parts. But yeah, this story aggravated me a bit just because of like I mentioned before, like this misunderstanding that is constantly being put in the media that I'm like, no, it's not true. But yeah, if I didn't know about that, then yeah, the story was good. Just a bit over the top with the villains in here, which is just a bit much. Let's see, they just weren't as believable. Then I read Like a River Glorious. This is the second book in the Gold Seer trilogy by Red Carnation. And I really liked the first book. It kind of reminded me of True Grit, the first book in the series. But so because they're going from I think it was Georgia all the way to California, and so you have like that story momentum of crossing America and all the stuff that they encounter, and a lot of action in there, and and she was a very strong character. What was different from True Grit is that the main character has this like magical ability. The only part in this that's like fantasy is that she can sense gold. No one else has any magical abilities except the main character. How she can she knows, like, if you hide it under this like pillow here, then she knows exactly where it's at. And so in this book, the second book, they're in California now, and she is. I don't want to give things to. Well, I don't. This probably wasn't going to give anything away from the first story, because I think it talks about that in the description. Maybe not. I don't want to give anything away. But anyway, so she has a family member who knows about her ability and wants to use that power for their own gain. And so they follow her to California and basically want to trap her and use her as like their like diving rod. What do you call those? Like the where you find the wells. Something. Yeah, they basically want to use her to find gold and set up their own mine. And so this one, because it didn't have like that adventure aspect of going across like the frontier and things like that, it was stationary. I didn't think it was as good as the first one, and I probably won't go on to the third one. I just felt like this was a weaker story overall. But yeah, I'm happy to have read it to know more about what was going on now that she had arrived to California. I then read, going to a physical book, and I'm going to be doing a book haul with, because I got these at the very end of January, and then there's a library book sale that's happening in a week or so, and so I'm just going to do a joint book haul, because I didn't get too many books there, but I'm probably going to get a lot at the library book sale, because they'll be so cheap. So this one is The Red Carnation by Phyllis A. Whitney, and this cover, oh my, I didn't want to show you an e-copy, I had to show you this cover. It's awful. And the back is the same cover. Like, if I can just show you this face, it's like, I don't know. It's something. I have no words for it. But I read a lot of her books. I read all of them actually, except for as a kid, except for some of her juvenile work. I read some of those too. But this is the first book she had published, I believe, that was for adults, and it was written a lot differently than her future work. But yeah, this was a reread for me. I just saw it at the store, and like I had to get it. And yeah, this if I didn't know the author, I would never have picked this up. Because this cover is just bad. Anyway, so this is about it's all set at this department store, and they're setting up like window displays, and this main character here, Linnell, is one of the people that set up, like, she did write the ad copy. And Phyllis A. Whitney does a lot of like mystery writing, but she also does like, there's always like a romance story like in the background as well. And sometimes she does historical fiction as well. But this one, yeah, it's following this like this. There's a lot of murder involved. Where um, her her lover or ex-lover gets killed and gets murdered. And so like who done it? It's kind of like Clue because like it had to be someone that was in the department store after hours, so it had to be like a worker. And so there's tons of red herrings in here because like it's so what I like about Phyllis A. Whitney is like you can't really guess who did it until the end. But this one, it was like I said, it was written differently than her future works because it had like that old timey kind of mystery where normally in her work you really get to know the character and you follow along with them. And but this one, I don't know, I didn't really feel you didn't get much of backstory with this, and I don't know, I couldn't really root for anyone or like really hate anyone in this story, if that makes sense. I felt like removed from the story. But yeah, this was her first book that she was published, I believe. And so yeah, I'm happy to have reread it. It's been a really long time since I read this one, but yeah, I think I'm for sure gonna be picking up some of her future works, and hopefully the library books that will have some more of her, because I think she's out of print. I checked my library and they didn't have any copies, but yeah, hopefully with better covers because this was just a bit much. And then the last book I read is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And this is the first book in the Poppy War series. And I picked this one up because at the library I saw that the second one came out, and that one, the cover like really enthralled me. And so it was the second book, so I need to go back and read. I need to read the first one before getting the second one. And this is about the main character here is called Ren. I think I can show you with it's really cool artwork. The main character is Ren, who this was kind of like had a lot of like fantasy elements all in one. It opens up with her taking this like really hard exam, and so she's up late at night studying for it to get into this like prestigious school, and she wants to leave the town she's in to go to the school because she has these really horrible like foster parents. And so it kind of like had elements of like Harry Potter in a way. She goes to the school, this academy, and she's learning all these abilities, like a lot of like martial arts, and eventually she learns some magic as well. And then she's off to, has a lot of elements. She's off to war, and so yeah, this has a lot in it, a lot of fantasy elements that I like to read about, and because her studying and going to the academy and being there, it could be one book by itself. But this it follows her even after the academy and going into the war. And yeah, I really liked it, but it was had a dark element to it. For example, when she's studying to go to school, she's like a practice of like self-harm, of like melting candle wax on her arms to keep her awake like, late into the night, and so that she can continue studying for this exam. And so like that's the thing that I can't talk. That's just an example of like the dark elements, and there's a lot more to it than that. That's dark, but overall I really liked it, because not all fantasy has to be all light and happy. I mean, it did have those moments in there, but overall it's kind of like a grim story in a way, because the whole country is at war, and yeah, so there's a lot of intrigue and like who is behind all of these movements, and so yeah, you learn a lot about the enemy. And so I'm hoping the second book will go into a lot more detail on the enemy of sorts. And so yeah, this was really good. I follow a couple like fantasy booktubers as well, and I think I've seen a couple of them mention that series. So yeah, these are all the books I read this week. Let me know if you read any of them, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, BookTube.